It's not that long ago that the world champion of StarCraft 2 was not just the world champion, but also the highest ranked Protoss on the European server. Now what I've got for you today is a best of 3 series where our Terran player is none other than GuMiho. And the man right here in the top right hand corner with the blue Protoss pieces, he goes by the name of Clem. I never know what to make of this, but I'm always a fan. Generally speaking, Clem going up against GuMiho in a Terran versus Terran is of course an absolute banger. But there's a lot of players out there that don't necessarily love watching, and neither do they enjoy playing the mirror matchups as much. Now, for the pro gamers, usually there's a little bit too much of a variance issue, right? Where the margin for error is just so tiny in the mirror matchups that if you make one little slip up early on, you just instantly leave and lose the game. But in this particular instance, I think that Clem is, I guess having some good fun. So this was played a couple days ago during one of the weekly events that Wardy puts out. And I'm excited to find out exactly what ended up happening between these two. Because obviously we all know that Clem is a ridiculously good Terran player. But what about his Protoss? GuMiho, of course, well, one of the world's best. His TVT is actually very solid, so I'm excited to find out. I guess maybe that's the reason? GuMiho's Terran versus Terran is good, but is it so good that we are like almost scared of it? Do we like purposely switch it up because GuMiho is the Gumi god in Terran versus Terran? I don't think really that's the case, but maybe Clem has, I mean, maybe he's got a point to prove, right? The multiplayer balance patch, it's definitely changing Protoss for the better. Maybe he can show us how you're supposed to be playing Protoss going up against the Terran. Obviously for this particular matchup, Clem will know all the ins and outs. It's a little bit different maybe if it would be like a Protoss versus Zerg. Because that's just a matchup that is, well, I'm sure he's still going to be very good. But that's not the matchup he's as confident in as he would be for any of the versus Terran matchups. But it is curious to see him mixing it up just a little bit. So, Protoss has quite a few options. Most of the time, though, it's a Twilight Council after the Cybercore. This is an Adept first, so he could certainly go ahead and add on a Stargate if he wants to. What's it going to be? It's going to be a Twilight. Okay. It didn't fit over there? Like, okay, anyways. A little bit of inefficiency there, but ultimately it doesn't matter all too much. Adept is coming back home now that the Reaper has arrived. Second Adept is available. Very common opener, of course, for Protoss. Nothing all too uncommon. You can see that GuMiho is playing this quite safe. Purposefully not building the command center on the low ground. He knows that in a straight-up macro game, he should be favored. So if he can get the game to be standard, it probably works out for him. So I don't mind the idea of building the command center in the main base and just making sure that the opponent, with a bunch of proxy gates, right, can't just get the straight-up cancel on the expansion. I don't really see Clem as a cheeser. I don't think GuMiho does either, but he's just making sure that everything here is as safe as it possibly can be. Generally speaking, whenever pro gamers off-race, they're still going to be very formidable, especially in the earlier stages of it, but then as soon as we get into a spot that they likely haven't played before, right? Like if you're in a situation that you're not as confident in, you're also naturally not going to be as good at that stage in the game. Whereas the early game, I mean, this is the type of match that Clem can play with Protoss any day of the week. Nice little snipe right there with that Widow Mine. In the meantime, that Reaper still going around. This is just good old Blink, and it looks like we are gonna go for the triple gate. So all very normal, but nothing out of the ordinary. We should see a third Nexus here in a little bit. This is one of those middle of the road builds where you can definitely put on some pressure on the other side of the map. And sometimes you can even win straight off of a triple gate. But this is strong offensively, defensively, and well, macro-wise, it's also by no means bad. So it's gonna allow him to grab that third Nexus nice and quick. Some Protoss players are brave enough to build this base off of only 2 gateways, which can be a little bit risky. But this is all very, very normal. Wasn't entirely sure what to expect from Clem going into this particular match. I was wondering, much like GuMiho, if maybe he would turn into a cheeser, but this is all very standard. Now, we all have seen what Clem can do, right? With Marine Marauder Medevac. His Marine control and just his, well, micro is phenomenal. I would imagine that microing Stalkers overall is a little bit more straightforward, but obviously you do have a lot of value in that Blink upgrade in particular. These units have a lot more HP, So technically speaking, they also have a lot more value, as we do have the Widowmine drop getting cleaned up. I was looking at that medevac like 7 times, and then of course it commits as soon as I look away. Looks like not really any damage was dealt though. On the flip side though, as we do have that Widowmine once more trying to go in. On the flip side, if you make a mistake with your Stalker Micro and you lose a couple of them here, or, well, even worse, if you lose the Warp Prism, then sometimes Terrans can just go straight across the map and kill you. I like the positioning here on that barracks. GuMiho protecting that Stimpack upgrade. Ooh, we do have an aggressive blink forward. Nice little bit of picking up here as well, but I do think that was a little overly ambitious. That is a lot of Marines, and even though the Siege Tank does get picked off, a Stalker also had to pay the price, and a lot of these units are very low. I mean, 1 Siege Tank shot, and we see like another 4 of them disappear. Good snipe right there on the Observer. So far, we're losing 1 of each. We can lose 1 Prism, but not a second Stalker. Okay. Well, you know what? That's still a fantastic trait, second Stalker or not. 2 additional tanks going down. GuMiho was anticipating that, well, we would see those Stalkers go into the main base. And just like that, Clem finds himself in a really lovely position. We do have 1 Widowmine, or sorry, 1 medevac drop full of Marines. I thought there was going to be a Widowmine still left in there. But it's just going to be a bunch of Marines on the other side of the map. Stimpack at this point is done. Combat Shields has just started. We don't have the +1 infantry attacks or whatever, so this is not going to be that big of a commitment. But this is excellent when it comes to killing probes, and just like that, GuMiho is going to find a lot of damage. In the meantime, the Stalkers in the main base are being annoying, but Marines are quite tradable. And this is a good bit of damage done right here. Lovely drop from GuMiho. It's one of the reasons why those Siege Tanks ended up going down. Sorry, Jimmy. Oh, never mind. He came back for Jimmy. We never see Terran players coming back for Jimmy. Anyways, that's the reason why those 2 Siege Tanks died at the front, and why a couple SCVs had to pay the price. They were no longer protected by the Marines. But those Marines got a ton of damage done on the other side of the map, and, well, that makes this game very playable once more for the Gumi God, who now goes into a 3rd command center inside of the main base. Clem is going to continue building up probes as well on the other side of the map, and he's getting that charge upgrade. Now those Marines, including Jimmy, they're coming back in for more. A couple of the Stalkers, though, up on the high ground. They're going to target fire down the medevac first and foremost, but this is a really solid amount of damage done for 1 medevac full of Marines. An additional 12 probes go down. That's a ton. That's a lot. That income advantage that Protoss previously had, it is nowhere to be seen anymore. Okay. Ooh, well, this also doesn't help. We have about 5-6 probes on idle inside of the natural expansion. It's important for Clem to fix that here ASAP. We should see... Oh, we already have the charge upgrade done. I was going to say, if we forget about the charge upgrade, life is going to be a bit of a mess. Instead, we're going to be continuing the macro. We're going to make a transition towards a Robo Bay or anything along those lines. Do we have to rebuild our economy first? Well, he's going to try and keep that Terran player occupied on the other side of the map. But ultimately, the army here for GuMiho is going to be much too big for these Stalkers to push away. And yeah, he at the very least has the heads up that Terran is marching across. But this is a dangerous army right here from GuMiho. In the meantime, the 3rd command center lands on the low ground. It's going to morph into an orbital command. We do have a couple Zealots here being annoying, though. And this is much like that Marine drop from earlier. Very annoying for the opponent to deal with. In the meantime, we did have some good force fields here, or at least 1 good force field. Can we add 1 more into the mix? Yep, there we go. 2 more into the mix. Immortals in the meantime from the high ground, gunning down those siege tanks. 16 SCVs have gone down on the other side of the map. And in the meantime, Clem is also winning the fight at home. What was previously looking, as he gets another medevac on its way out, what was previously looking like a phenomenal game for GuMiho has now been flipped upside down. Now the Robo Bay goes down. Now the 4th Nexus is building up north. Clem goes across the map right here, and he's ready to start hammering at that 3rd. Denying the 3rd base would be absolutely massive. Now, one of the Immortals, I believe, ended up going down as well. Quite difficult. Oh, we do have a nice force field. More energy available on those sentries. This is, of course, the new multiplayer balance patch. We are, of course, on brand new maps as well, so those sentries can get that energy boost from the Nexus. Good force field. Lovely force field. Allowing those zealots to charge forward, although they also get blocked a little bit. Careful with those Widow Mines, Gumi. You might accidentally end up dealing a lot of friendly fire as well. Blink. Okay, a little bit too early. Just about a split second too early. Big warp in over here. Clem is smelling blood. He wants to see if he can win this game right here, right now. And you know what? He might be onto something. Zealots there slice themselves up from the rest, and they decide to go after the Widow Mines. All of those are gone right now. Immortal is just target firing down the command center itself, and it falls. And with that, GuMiho taps out. Must be so nice to just wake up in the morning and be phenomenal at StarCraft. Ay, ay, ay. I know we're all stuck in our own MMR hill. I've been stuck at a little over 5,000 MMR for quite a long time, and yeah, I guess I've played some Protoss. I've off-raced with some Terran as well, but they're never quite as comfortable. But must be nice if you're Clem, right? You play your off-race, and you can actually win against another pro gamer. See, this is always the problem with StarCraft balance design. Is Zerg overpowered? Is Terran overpowered? Or is Serral just too good? Is Clem just too powerful? Ever since Serral started dominating back in 2018, Zerg has been repeatedly nerfed over and over and over again. And obviously there were other Zerg players that were successful since then too. Dark comes to mind. Raynor, of course, won his fair share of tournaments. But it is an interesting discussion, because a lot of it does come down to individual skill. Yeah, nerfing individual pro gamers is a little tricky. I guess that's the advantage, though, for games like, for example, Age of Empires. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of the Age of Empires players do play multiple civs, multiple civilizations. Obviously, the civilizations work out quite a bit differently than the StarCraft 2 races. I mean, they're all mostly, at least, the same, because ultimately they're all human armies. But there is definitely something to be said for playing random only. Like, random would certainly fix a lot of the balance complaining. Although I guess if you have random going up against random, you will sometimes get unlucky spawn locations and just players getting, getting losses just by the luck of the draw, which is also a little suboptimal. But it's an interesting debate. I mean, I giggle about this every year. Whenever we have a new StarCraft 2 World Champion crowned, within about 2 minutes on the StarCraft 2 Battle.net forums, but also on the subreddit, right? There are people complaining about, Clem won the World Championship. Is Terran ever gonna get nerfed? Question mark, exclamation point, right? There's immediately people complaining about balance. Truth be told, Clem just played better than anybody else. Right? That's the reason why he became the world champ. But there is certainly always that debate where people don't necessarily appreciate the pro gamer for their abilities, but they immediately throw it into the balance wine mix instead, and it's a little bit annoying sometimes. It's a little frustrating. I don't think the pro gamers really mind it all too much, but as a StarCraft fan, I'm like, oh man, come on, come on, dude. He's just playing phenomenally. Alrighty, anyways, it's once more going to be a Twilight Council here for Clem. We have ourselves a Cyclone opener for GuMiho. Keep in mind that the Cyclone changes are significant. This is the Cyclone as we had it for a very long time in StarCraft 2. It's gone through many iterations, but this is effectively the reverted version. Not to the previous version of the Cyclone, but the version before that. The main big difference here for this particular matchup is that you need a tech lab in order to build a Cyclone. In the current version, in the live version of the game, you need to have, well, a factory, and that's it. And it shuts down a lot of the early game builds. So Adepts get countered really easily by the Cyclone. And a lot of the times when we see the Protoss player go for like Adepts into a Stargate, for example, they will open up with Adepts, obviously, because the Stalker's 25 gas more expensive. The Stargate is also really pricey. 150 gas compared to the Twilight Council, which is only 100. You can really, in the current version of StarCraft 2, you can really mess up Protoss quite badly in the early game if they go for Adept into Stargate by just making a little bit of like a Marine Cyclone push. And you can still do that, but it's a bit more of a commitment here. You can see that GuMiho is even leaving that Cyclone at home right now. Lucky here for Clem, though, it wasn't a Stargate in the first place. This is once more a good old Twilight Council into good old Blink. Now, much like the previous game, though, we once more have an unannounced medevac drop, dealing a hell of a lot of damage. 4 probes for free. A lot of lost mining time as well. Yep. That's gonna make GuMiho skyrocket as far as the income advantage goes. Third Nexus, though, is building in the meantime over at the 6 o'clock position here on Ultra Love, and we've got ourselves a Banshee follow-up. Cloaking field is coming. One Banshee is already heading across the map. This will get spotted here, which is nice. Clem getting the heads up of that means that he can start positioning those observers a little bit closer to home. This is a very ambitious siege up right over here. Even if you need, even if you notice it though here as the Terran player, you still have to commit to a scan if you really want to get rid of it. Okay, you should get rid of it, but the scan is obviously by no means free. Clem already got some of the information he's looking for. There is that medevac still on the far left side of the main base. It will probably commit in conjunction with those Banshees. Forge coming up right now inside of the main base. Oh, Banshee's actually cutting off some of the Stalkers. Interesting usage here by the GuMiGod. Major skill check, though, coming in here from GuMiho. This is just an awful lot of Terran. Those Stalkers need to try and prevent the siege tanks from getting into the perfect position to siege up, because they're really tricky to break. There is no charge or anything on the horizon here. And these are the type of attacks that you really need to be able to shut down, and the ones that are more difficult to hold now that shield battery overcharge has disappeared. Okay. I think that these siege tanks are going to be extremely hard to break. Nicely done here by GuMiho. He doesn't have Stimpak. There is no combat shields. This is just a bunch of Marines, but they are going to be able to gun down a lot of the Stalkers, and if they can finish them off, surely also the Nexus on the back of this. Probes have been pulled away from their mineral lines. Siege Tank decides to switch targets here, and while he's winning the battle on the ground, he's killing all of the probes. That Nexus was not going to be far behind, and GuMiho evens up the score. For our final game for today, final game in this best of 3 series, we find ourselves on Whispers of Gold. And apparently I am that parent again. The one that is secretly mashing potatoes and broccoli into your meat or whatever else you like. Because I am spoon-feeding you a little bit of Terran versus Terran. Ha! Apparently for the final game of the series, Clem has decided to play a little bit of Terran instead. I know that, well, generally speaking, whenever I upload any mirror matchup onto YouTube, not a lot of folks want to watch it. There's a lot of people that will like, Terrans, Protoss, Zerg, there's 2 of them, I don't like this. I know what's good for you, okay? Just trust me, Terran versus Terran is an excellent matchup. Man, if especially Protoss versus Protoss was the most popular matchup to cast on YouTube, I have so many replays of PvP. It's actually kind of absurd. For most of the online tournament signups right now, there have been a couple. I know that the KSL, the Korean StarCraft League in particular, had some issues with this. I know some of the other online cups also had some problems where they quite literally have like 14 out of 16 signups be Protoss. So it's like 90% Protoss players. There's a lot of Protoss versus Protoss to go around on the new multiplayer balance patch. Well, I do enjoy watching the occasional match of PvP, right? My favorite part about the most recent KSL, actually, so they literally had 16 players, 1 Terran, 1 Zerg, 14 Protoss. Guess what the finals was? I think it was Dark versus Björn. None of the Protoss players made it to the finals. Anyways, that cracked me up. I thought it was very funny. Maybe a little sad, but all the Protoss players murdering each other in the brackets, and in the meantime, you have the Terran and the Zerg slowly cruising until the grand finals. A lot of that is definitely individual skill. That's always one of the points of debate. So a lot of people are very concerned with over-buffing Protoss, because Protoss is already a little over-represented in the higher leagues of StarCraft. So it's this weird thing where at like the absolute highest level, at the pinnacle of the sport, Protoss rarely wins tournaments. But then right below that, right, like the rank 20 of the planet, right, all the way up to like the rank 1000 of the planet, like 3 out of 4 players is Protoss. I don't really know the exact number, but it's something along those lines. It's a very steep increase in the amount of Protoss players right below the absolute highest level of the game. And I think abilities like, for example, the energy overcharge on the Nexus, like something that actually has deep strategic implications, that's the type of stuff that is gonna help separate the best players from the very best. Anyways, so far, very normal builds here for both players. You can see actually that practically everything here is mirrored. It's all a little bit different. Nothing is entirely identical. But roughly speaking, we end up with a very similar result. So one of the issues you run into in the mirror matchups is that both players are usually making the same units, or at least somewhat of the same unit. If you make one little slip up, right? Like say you go across the map right now and you lose 2 of your Reapers, GuMiho can immediately retaliate on the other side of the map and just kill all of your workers too. So it's very, very risky. Then again, I always like the mirror matchups. I think they're very fun. Also because of the fact that there's so much skill involved, right? Like you need to be extremely good at that like twitchy micro, where things are so delicate that you have to be extremely cautious. Now we've got ourselves a Raven together with the Interference Matrix upgrade. Interference Matrix, very important in this matchup. It allows you to temporarily disable siege tanks. You can prevent a lot of damage output from the opponent, as we do have Clem now committing to an interesting little timing attack. Sieging up the tank on the jump-up location of the Reapers. Now, we have a couple units here on the low ground too, but they're extremely derpy, and this is the easiest cleanup of GuMiho's life. Do you see those units there getting stuck below the siege tank? Ay, ay, ay. Alright. Well, it wasn't the end of the world. Not really that many losses on the side of Clem. He's making siege tanks right now, so any of those Reaper and Hellion counterattacks are going to be quite defendable, but you do have to be a little careful, and that certainly is going to cost him a bit of time. That was I think that was probably the first time that Clem is going for an attack over here. Maybe he should have moved it just ever so slightly to the left. Yeah, I understand what he was trying to do, but that execution was not quite optimal. Second starport right now, going up in the back of the Terran's natural here for Gumi. Starport is extremely useful in this matchup. When you have that Sky Terran advantage, not only can you, for example, in the late game, switch to like Liberators and all that, but at this stage in the game, you can just dominate. If you can gun down all of your opponent's Vikings and then also kill all of the Ravens, you can go after the Medivacs next. Life becomes extremely difficult, and you can be super oppressive, I guess. That's the main thing. Even if you don't even need a tech lab or a reactor on this guy, you just make 3 Vikings where your opponent is making 2 at a time. It adds up very rapidly. Like if you have like 7 Vikings and your opponent has 4, obviously you're going to be able to kill it really quickly. And getting that air superiority is huge. Oh, good interference matrix over there. And that is going to disable Clem's Medivac. Jimmy, no. Medivac also ended up going down. But Jimmy is somewhere over there at the bottom of the tree. I don't know, man. If you find a marine suit, please return it to Clem. He's in desperate need of it right now. All memes aside, all of these engagements have been won so far by Gumi. Not doing anything weird, not doing anything unorthodox. He is making himself up for his first big attack. And this is a really sketchy one. So those Ravens are critical. We see a snipe right there on a single Hellion rather. Not the end of the world. Siege tank count right now in favor of GuMiho. But keep in mind, he's of course the aggressor. So he needs to be the one with the initiative for the engagement. Interference matrices are going to be absolutely critical here. Viking count currently in favor right now heavily for GuMiho. There we go. Vikings also deal bonus damage to mechanical units, so they actually are a formidable target. Yeah, against all of those siege tanks. One of them is still available in the back. A couple of SCVs here at the front as well, trying to be annoying. GuMiho right now, though, just leapfrogging his siege tanks. Unsieges the ones from the back, moves them a little bit further forward. Unsiege the one in the back, move it a little bit further forward too. In the meantime, there's a third command center even building on location. GuMiho trying to create a chokehold right now on the natural expansion here of Clem. And this base is in a world of trouble. Like, you have to do something about this. If you lift off the CC, yeah, you can keep it alive, but you're gonna lose the game in the long run. You can't keep repairing it. Keep in mind that repair is not free. Clem already is losing a ton of resources because of it. Those SCVs aren't mining. Apparently he decides to pull the trigger right here, right now. Interference matrices do go down. Vikings were derping on the ground a little bit, but they are dealing so much damage to all of those SCVs. And just like that, I think that is game over. The Vikings reinforcing this. There's not a whole lot of army units available here anymore for GuMiho on this side of the map. So I guess in theory Clem can stabilize, but 41 SCVs down the drain. 2 CC going up against, well, he does have a third command center here, but I mean, this is gonna be pretty much impossible to land over there on the low ground. He has kept it alive though. I mean, the fact that he cleaned that up in the first place is extremely impressive. GuMiho decides to go into a fusion core right now too. Obviously, advanced ballistics is still a banger of an upgrade too. Another one of those advantages of having that sky superiority. He's already got a couple liberators out. When you know that your opponent has got double medevac oh my, oh, that's so sad for Clem. When you know that your opponent has 2 starports available, you know that you're not going to be able to catch up in that Viking count ever. And that means that liberators are now going to be part of the army too. Clem, well, when it rains, it pours. Everything went wrong in this game. And that means that it's GuMiho who obtains the victory 2-1.